Hello, this is the April 24th to October 2024 update of how we're getting on in the group. Um, yeah, so much has happened in the last 6 months. Um, I mean, winter is starting to get here. I've already got the sniffles and a bit of a sore throat. Um, Time is just flying by. Um, so, snapshot where the group's now. Um, Probably working back chronologically from the most recent to back in April. Um, we've recently had the county championships for combined events. We entered athletes into five categories. We got five county champions and five championship best performances. Um, Under 17 women, under 20, under 23, and senior women's decathlon, and under 17 boys octathlon. Um, Everybody performed really well, lots of PBs everywhere. They seemed to really enjoy it as a fun way to end the season. That was late September. Um, so yeah, that was nice and fun in Gillingham. The week before was English schools at Stoke. Sent two athletes, one for Kent, one for Surrey. As you can see down the bottom right picture, Kent had Thomas and Surrey had Alex and the under 15 boys, both of them. Um, yeah, they performed well due to weather, thunderstorms, various other, I wouldn't say unforeseen for circumstances, but one way or another, the pentathlon became a quadrathlon. The 800 meters couldn't happen. Uh, One of the pools for high jump had to be finished inside. Uh, we were there for quite a long period of time. I'd probably say when hurdle started at 10 a.m., I think the high jump first pool, but ended up being the last pool to finish. I don't think finished until about half six, seven. It was a long old day. And by the end, uh, the senior boys were sent home. Uh, yeah, so I think they ended up doing an octathlon, three events on the first day and five on the second. I think the under 17 octathlon for boys went ahead as normal. That finished on time. But yeah, it was Stoke. I don't want to get into it too much, but for an English schools final, not having electronic timing, I thought that was poor. Uh, I know all the officials are volunteers. I get that, um, but for a national final, doesn't matter what it is. Um, I would expect electronic timing. Um, Hey ho, the boys enjoyed it. It was an experience. It was a very long way to go for that experience. 4 or 5 hours, maybe five and a half in the rain, and then Thomas had to keep on driving into Kent, so that was maybe 6.5, 7 hours for him. Um, but yeah, it it is what it is. Um, then before that, Shane, who technically I don't really coach anymore, but it's nice to hear. I'm in his Shane's coaching support team WhatsApp chat, and it's just really nice to hear from him, see how he's getting on. But yeah, he went to the World Junior Champs, Lima, Peru. He ran two PBs, made it to the semi-final, and just what an experience, going to the World Juniors as a first year, represented Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, just amazing. He's doing really well, and yeah, keep on going, Shane. Um, then what else happened? Oh yeah, in August, which doesn't seem that long ago, um, it was the EA Combined Events Championships at Eton, of all places. Not that I'm complaining, that's a lot nearer to home than, say, Manchester, but swings and roundabouts. And yeah, uh, Ollie's first ever decathlon, under 17. That just seems so young to me, but absolutely smashed it. 6,350 odd points as a first year. Um, that is the highest points total as a first year since David Guest in like 2007, 2008, whatever year it was. Like he's clearly the best first year combined eventer for a very long time. And David Guest was nothing to sneeze at. Um, so no, Ollie did incredibly well. And then the young boys, Thomas and Jack, um, yeah, you know, first time doing pole vault in a competition, and it's the national under 15 boys octathlon. It was their first taste doing 2-day events. Handled it really well. Um, you could tell all of them, uh, including Ollie, towards the middle of the second day, just starting to get a bit irritable. Just you could tell they were getting a little bit tired, and usually they'd have a bit of a bounce in their step, and if something hadn't gone quite to plan, they'd bounce from it. It wasn't the case. Ollie, I expected better, uh, but then when I thought about it, he had, and we'll come to it later, but essentially he had best part of 5, 6 months off um, of training. So in terms of capacity to be able to keep going, in actual fact, he wasn't as prepared as he could be. But it was just nice for him to do a decathlon, and part of it was just to see how his back was. Um, we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, and then working back from that, English schools. Um, yeah, so English schools and the EA individual event champs. Um, really well done. We had young Alessia in the high jump coming second in the under 15 girls, if I remember rightly. Um, yeah, and English schools. We had Bella coming fourth in the long jump, which was really good. I know, not fourth, third, but she lost out on count back, if I seem to remember rightly. Uh, I can't remember. She wasn't particularly happy with her jump, but considering her journey and how this time a year ago she wasn't training and surgery and all the rest of it, um, to finish the season with a 5:79 long jump and to actually have done a heptathlon and everything's fine and she's not, there's no adverse effects or anything like that. She just needs to train more. I think she's had a really great season. And then Josh, in his last competition of the year, after we found out the news about him, uh, won English schools for long jump with the under 17 men's category. And yeah, that's something he just wanted to do. Very laid back. I remember it very well. He rocked up to the Kent County Champs and said, "What do I need? Uh, what do I need to qualify for English schools?" And I think I said something like 680 was national standard. I can't remember what I said. Very first jump, he does 689, and then he does a windy 702. And he just says, "Yeah, that'll do. Can't be bothered to do anymore." Puts it away, and then really doesn't do a lot else. Does the odd YDL, I guess, but I think just didn't really. He he later we found out that he had a torn meniscus, and so the knee problems he was having last March, April, May, earlier in the spring was from a torn meniscus. I seem to remember it was from him playing basketball and him complaining about it, but I don't think we'll ever get to the end of it. But essentially, he's had that torn meniscus since, well, 18 months ago. And so everything he's done, um, so what has he done since then? He's done English schools under 15 boys pentathlon. Uh, he's he's won the SIAB for under 16s in Cardiff. He then came third at the indoor under 17 heptathlon. He then long jumped 7 meters with a torn meniscus, and then jumped 699 with a torn meniscus to an English schools. Yeah, I just absolute insane caliber athlete. Um, and I just hope. Well, he had surgery. I can't remember the exact date. I want to say it was a Friday. 13th of September, something like that. I can't remember. It was a little while ago. It's coming up to the 4-week period, was it? The 15th? No, wait. Yeah, Friday the 13th of September, I think. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point was he had the surgery. Um, it's been 4, 5, 6 weeks now. Um, I saw him actually at the physio, uh, at the Chelsea physio after his surgery only last week, and you can't even see the stitches. You'd have to really inspect his knee to see what they did. It's an arthroscopy, keyhole surgery. The incisions are so tiny. The actual stitches, I mean, he ripped out when he accidentally pulled his trousers off too quickly, but it's all gone. At this point, it's now rehab work, um, the final bit of healing, and I believe he did tell me, and I'm rubbish. I should really have noted this down before recording the video, but he's going to be signed off by the consultant. Hopefully, the physio seemed really optimistic. Um, and yeah, he's got a load of rehab stuff to do. I don't anticipate him training super duper hard until early mid-November. I'm not in a rush. As long as he's fit and healthy and back to his normal self, he could take all the time he needs. I think what is clear though is that his indoor season for 2025, so from January to March, he won't be doing the indoor nationals. I don't know. Prove me wrong. Maybe in 6 months' time we have a different uh, update, but I can't see that happening. Him doing that without seriously injuring himself. I, for one, will not be advocating it unless I'm truly 100% confident that he can do it and, more importantly, get away with it safely. It's one thing doing it and then being bits afterwards, but I'd have to be really sure that he could handle it. And to be honest, I'm leaning towards no. Uh, and I think he wants to prioritize the outdoor season anyway. I think we're in agreement with that. Um, and then, you know, before all that, where was the group middle of the summer? Well, we had two athletes ranked number one in their event. Bit of a dip from last year, but then last year had such an amazing year. A lot of athletes were at the top of their age group. Um, Josh, Ollie, Story, um, all the young girls, all the young girls at bottom under 15, essentially. Um, sorry, yeah, bottom under 15 were top year under 13 last year. So they're just starting to make the transition to higher hurdles, slightly heavier shot put. And to be honest, under 15 girls seems to me like a very, very competitive age group. For combined events, at least, there just seems to be hundreds, absolutely hundreds. So the average rank of the group uh, as of the 1st of October was 19.6, so 19th in the UK. 3 in podium position and 6 are top 10 in the UK. No one is outside the top 100. And pretty much everyone is in within the top 50. So they're all competitive. I'd like to think they're getting more confident in their abilities. They're all very good county level. Mixed results if it came to a national competition, but my at this point in time, I just want them to be enjoying the sport and enjoying their progression. We'll talk about that in a little bit more, but it's very difficult. Like you can't quantitatively measure happiness, uh, enjoyment. Whereas I guess rankings is probably the thing I first go to because it's a fairly easily quantifiable metric, even if it is subjective and it's based on what other people in the country are doing. As a general rule of thumb, if you have a fairly large group of about 20, which to me, combined events, if you have a combined event group of 20 and they're all, you know, most of them are in the top 10, the average is 19th, you know, they're all fairly competitive at the regional and national level, then I'd say that's to me, that feels like pretty good going. I wouldn't say it's super duper high performance, but at least Uh, it seems fairly structured and yielding results. We talked about the English schools golds with Josh. In terms of coaching education, I have now got my level 3 in all 4 specialisms now: endurance, jumps, sprints and hurdles and throws. You can just about see it in the little picture just below left of my image now. Um, has it been worth it? Yes. I'd say there's a lot of overlap. I think a lot of the content of the level 3 or the event group qualifications is clearly there's some stuff that overlaps. There's some stuff that's specific to the individual events. I found it very useful talking to people that were specialists. Um, it was useful but not surprising. I probably could have anticipated how they'd think. Um, it's very interesting on the jumps one, getting to chat to various jumps coaches. I think one of them was Lucas Zwiller, the guy who's the uh, head of jumps at Loughborough University. Seems like a cool guy. The throws one, Gary Power was the course leader, and yeah, it's just really nice to bump into him because he's going to be coaching an athlete of mine that I've been looking after this year, and I'm very confident that he's going to do good stuff there. And also, I mean, I competed with Gary way back when in British leagues when we were both a bit younger, so it's just nice to see familiar faces really. What else is new? Yeah, Rafer, bless him, he's the man that can do no harm. He's always a positive guy. It was really nice seeing him at the under 20 and senior combined events champs up in Birmingham. Uh, he invited me um, to sit in on the UKA combined events steering group. I think we're meeting 4 times a year. We had one meeting earlier on in the summer. I forget the date, but we've got another one planned in November. And it's just really nice to feel that you're contributing to how the sport's progressing. Uh, I feel like I have more of a finger on the pulse of what's going on combined events wise. Um, it's good to know when I'm talking to other coaches that I don't want to feel like I'm in too much of an echo chamber. I I very much view everything that's being said with suspicion. Not saying I won't take it on board, but I definitely think, well, okay, is that necessarily true? Is that true in all cases? Is that true just for here? What was the context? What was the meaning behind that thing being said? And when I was in that meeting, I did kind of feel that, well, I had to be on my guard a little bit. But yeah, it was nice people. I saw Tom Reynolds, who I haven't seen 2 decades, not since I was competing in decathlons. Really nice guy. He's now working for Northern Ireland Athletics, dealing with the combined eventers there. Um, speaking to Ashley Bryant, um, a guy that was just as I was leaving combined events, he was like the hot shot coming into it. The next up and coming star to break 8,000 points. Interesting to hear what he has to say, and lots of others. To be perfectly honest with you, and the combined events lead, who I'm now talking with a little bit more than I had been before, was Darren Ritchie. Uh, and so yeah, I'm very interested to hear what he has to say about things. Um, and yeah, various other bits and bobs. Um, and yeah, it's a positive experience. I'll keep on doing it as long as they keep inviting me. But I felt, you know, I'd stirred the boat, should we say? But that's fine. I don't think I said anything that was not warranted with statistics. Although interpretation of those statistics can be argued, I suppose, but I like to feel I justify everything I do. And yeah, so the final update, not to close the book on it because I feel like there's more to it, but young Isabella, she had major surgery last year after a torn ACL, and probably having thought about it, what I think has probably been the bigger impact that probably hasn't been not addressed but like appreciated is I think, and I could be wrong here, but they took part of her hamstring to patch up her ACL. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but what I have noticed, for whatever reason, if it's not that, and I'm just chatting absolute rubbish, is her speed has definitely dipped a little bit since her top end speed. She's still as springy as anything, don't get me wrong. But what I find really pleasing is, her attitude over the year and a half process, even when she was waiting for her knee to get better and waiting for surgery, she'd be going down to the track at Dartford, coaching youngsters, still getting involved in the sport, being a positive influence to others, just generally being a happy self. Such a good kid. And yeah, she comes back and jumps a 20, 30 centimeter PB in her first competition like nothing's happened. She hasn't missed a beat. The competitions after that, well, that's maybe a conversation for another time. But the point is, she's got it in her, and she seems to be recovering well. Her other events are coming on, and yeah, she did her first heptathlon in September. She seemed to enjoy it. She got a Kent Championship best performance record. What can I say? What hasn't gone so well, or maybe is a challenge, is last year the group's age was, I think I worked out to be about 14.6 last year. And so you would expect if I kept the same amount of people and it's a year later, that the average age should be 15.6 because everyone's got a year older, therefore the average is going to go up. But what's happened now is the average is 13.8, which means some athletes have gotten older, but I've definitely taken on an influx of newer young athletes that have joined. There's nothing wrong with that. I think there's, you know, that's okay. It's not necessarily an indicator of anything wrong. But my main concern is going to be over potentially morale. I feel like I experienced that a little bit with Jessie, because Jessie's 19. She's going to be turning 20 next year. And will she think I'm taking her training seriously if I'm giving her the same training as 10-year-olds? Well, not the same training. I mean, obviously, cater it to the individual needs of the athletes within the session. So, just because we're doing sprinting, I might set different. For example, I might set a different sprint objective for Jessie than the younger kids, and so on. But even if you do have that rational conversation with Jessie and say, look, we are doing the same kinds of things together. I'm obviously going to have different goals for you than for the younger ones because you're clearly more developed, and so you need to be challenged a different way. Even if you rationalize it like that, and it's called, we do it in teaching all the time, differentiation. You've got your A-star students and you've got your D grade students or E grade students, and you set them different work, and so it maximizes their progression and all that stuff, and that's totally fine. My concern is that you can rationalize it, but sometimes you feel like you're being lumped in with the kids, and sometimes you want to just be with your peers. It's a very human response. I get it. I was very weird in the sense that I would just train on my own. I couldn't give a monkeys. I trained with whoever. If I thought they were good, they were good. I didn't care what age they were. I just trained. I got on with it. I was very oblivious, maybe, or just apathetic. I don't know. I just got on with it. Whereas I could definitely see the social interactions going on more with the group. So that's something to bear in mind with. And ultimately, as we're going into winter, uh, the work rate is another issue, because it's definitely a culture shock when they've gone from lighter technical sessions, energy development work in the summer to, well, yeah, harder work in the winter, really. I wouldn't say harder, but there is something psychological about it being dark early. Pardon me. Yeah, dark earlier, colder. I'm fine with it personally. I couldn't give a monkeys. I just plow on anyway. But you'll find that some athletes don't like the dark. They don't like the cold. They don't want to do it. So I'm just saying I'm aware of what's going on age wise. Um, so yeah, uh, that's that. The squad is relatively healthy. Uh, there's little niggles like, oh, I've got tight, oh, I've got shin splints, or oh, I've got tight, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, you need to warm up properly. We do that as part of our ramp warm up and all the rest of it. They're relatively healthy, and to be honest, I keep a check in my little diary of like their injuries and stuff. And if anything happens, like on and off for more than a couple of months, and I'd be like, listen, you've had this problem for quite a while. Maybe you need to do something about it, whether get an MRI or see a physio. It depends. But luck, it's all been little niggle stuff, and to be honest, it's probably just a sign that they're working hard. There's nothing that's been a cause for concern. And yeah, the only thing that's happened is one athlete well, Josh, has needed minor surgery early in September, and that's from an injury, I believe, that was from May 2022. No, it'd be May 2023. That's a typo. So 2023. Yeah. But he's recovering from that. You can see the picture there where he was at the physio for Chelsea and on the force plates and stuff and doing single leg balance work, double leg balance work, various resistance band stuff. And he's got a whole load of gear, compression, boots, braces, electro, pulsing doodahs, and all this other fancy gubbins I don't quite believe will make a difference, but as long as he feels it does, and some scientific articles, pardon me, proving that it does, I couldn't give the monkeys as long as it doesn't hurt him, and he feels there's a benefit, then fine. Um, but yeah, he's to his parents' credit, they went private, they sorted it out, and they got a surgery date within a month. As soon as they got the MRI that this has happened, Bush straight in. Um, I'm very thankful they take Josh seriously. I think he's a fantastic athlete, and yeah, deserves every opportunity. Um, and then yeah, the final thing, um, English schools. So last year, I think it went incredibly well. Um, Josh and Ollie got second and third, and Sienna, unfortunately, no throwed in the javelin, but she put in a heroic performance in the 800, which is a very sad way to go for a last heptathlon, potentially uh, ever, unless she does more. But she's now doing 400-meter hurdles work, Marina Armstrong. She seems to be enjoying it. Um, so yeah, as long as she stays in the sport, she's happy and she keeps progressing, then that's great. But yeah, in terms of the English schools this year, I don't know what it was, but one athlete who was a first year under 15 girl didn't want to go. Understandably, she'd had a little bit of a problem with her hamstring. She wasn't feeling confident over the hurdles. She was a first year. It's just a lot of you forget that sometimes that they're kids and they get nervous, they get worried, and it's okay. It's not the end of the world. It would have been nice if she'd have gone, but I think the Kent Champs was a positive experience for her. She did a pentathlon at the end of the year. The rankings are the rankings. I'm sure she'll be fine next year. And then Thomas and Ollie, that was Thomas and Alex. It was their first um, English schools. They didn't go last year, but this year, what a season they've had. I mean, Thomas has been to every national championships going and come like fourth. Like he's whinging like, oh, I've come fourth every time. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, but this time last year you came third at the counties. Now you're like fourth at nationals. Like you've majorly stepped up this year. You know, he's massively improved in points. As far as I'm concerned, you just keep on going. You just keep on improving. Your time will eventually come. I mean, if you're performance driven, which I'm not, and more progress, he's progressed massively. You just keep progressing. It's it's a difficult one because you want them. If the progress keeps being there, some people are very performance um, centered. Like they won't enjoy it unless they're performing well. Whereas some people are very, what I find, progress oriented. You could have somebody that goes to a park run, a 5K park run, and drops their time from 22 seconds to 21 seconds 40, 22 minutes. And then next week they drop it to 21 minutes 40, and they've just knocked 20 seconds off their PB. Performance wise, that's naff. I mean, let's be real. I can run that, and I'm 130 kilos. But to them, it's like, wow, yeah, I just run a PB, yeah, and they're really happy about it. Whereas some people could just progress, but if they're not winning golds, they're just really upset about it. And so, what makes it fun for them is different for person to person. And I think at the moment, Thomas is probably very performance driven. He wants to win things, which is good. I mean, he obviously cares about it and he wants to try hard. And when the going gets tough in training, he'll buckle down and he'll do it. I mean, I've no doubt in my mind from there. He's a tough boy. But he's very hard on himself. If he's not winning, if it's not amazing, it's crap. There's no in between. Like unless it's a spanking new PB, he'll beat himself up. And I don't think he's unique in that. I think there's quite a lot of young people who do feel like that. Um, and it is an attitude that I challenge every single time. And eventually, Josh was the same, Ollie was the same. Eventually, when they get a little bit older, they turn 15, 16, maybe 17, they start to go, actually, you know what, that's right. And they can start to rationalize it a bit more. But anyway, maybe I'm just waffling. But yeah, in terms of the English schools combined events, it was a poor group, poor results performance wise. First of all, let's be clear. Only 3 athletes I had qualified. I was probably expecting 6 or 7. Well, let's think about that. One didn't do a pentathlon, under 15 girls. One didn't, they did the Bracknell Southeast Regionals, but didn't want to go to school. So there's 2. Josh and Ollie. Josh had an MRI. No, what did Josh have? Josh had an X-ray. No, I can't remember now. Josh had something. He just didn't want to do it. Ollie had an X-ray. Well, he was waiting for results for an X-ray, and he had an MRI, and it was suspected pars defect, which is a mechanical fault down in the lower lumbar. I think it's L5S1, just above the sacrum, and there was an edema, which is like a pooling of water. They thought it was potentially spinal fluid, I think. This is all a bit hazy to me. I should have written this down. But anyway, he had this edema. I remember his dad ringing me while I was at my sister's wedding, and yeah, we just thought, geez, this, the options were you either have surgery and you're never doing athletics again because they're putting a metal plate in your back essentially, or you can keep risking it and eventually you'll be in a wheelchair. It'll just suddenly go. So we were both just like really, so really sad for him. But luckily, when he had the X-ray, it wasn't um, the pars defect. I don't want to say it's perforated, but it was a perturbated. It was some kind of word ated, perforated. I can't remember what it was, but something to do with a disc, and it leaked a little bit. And the doctor essentially said something like, "You just need to rest for 6 months and see how it goes." He did for 6 months, and then pretty much 2 weeks before the 6 months was up, He was like, well, there's a decathlon in 2 weeks' time. Can I do it? It's like, kind of a bit close, mate. And he said, look, if there's any problems, I'll pull out after day one. No, come on, I just want to do it. And I'm looking at him thinking like, we haven't done any pole vault. Uh, you haven't trained in 6, 7 months. You're stiff as a board. We haven't done any running. I'm not sure. But I mean, he did that decathlon after 6 months off from potentially having a back injury that could have meant he couldn't do the sport anymore. And he hadn't really trained since 2 weeks before that March heptathlon indoors. I mean, so what was that, middle of February? And then did the March heptathlon. And then after that heptathlon, he probably had 6, 7 weeks off. Didn't really come back until late April. And I thought that's weird. Like even for a decathlon, you'd have like 1 week off, maybe two, but 6 or 7, what's going on here? And he said that his back was a problem. They went to get an MRI. And then by the time the results came back from that, it was April, May. And so, yeah, Josh and Ollie had to miss the Southeast regionals. And because Kent didn't win the team event, because obviously they're missing two octathletes, yeah, they couldn't join back in English schools. And yeah, just a lot of athletes that I thought would be sure wins weren't. And that's okay. You know, it's literally only English schools under 15, under 17. It's not that big of a deal. To them, the kids and the parents, it's a massive deal. But I just don't care. Like in the nicest possible way, if they enjoy it and they love it, then yeah, I'm all for it. I'll turn up for it. It's wicked. But to me, my eyes on the prize is what are you doing at senior level if we're going to talk about performance? And if it's not about performance, are you enjoying yourself? Are you living a fit and healthy, active lifestyle? And are you gaining lots of friends and all the rest of it? Um, so yeah, that's pretty much that. Um, and yeah, so yeah, well, it's been a bug of mine, as you know, if you've been following me or watching my videos of this um, one coach versus many stuff. Um, and the reason why I'm against, well, the reason why it bugs me so much is because it seems to be everywhere. It's so everywhere at a young age, and I just don't rate it. Um, you, I think because maybe parents are used to dropping little Timmy off at gymnastics and then dropping little Debbie off at swimming and then dropping Timmy back off at karate. And it's kind of like parents feel a bit overwhelmed with constantly ferrying their kids backwards and forwards and all these different activities that they don't care. They're just dropping them off to a different coach. They say they do hurdles. Great, fine. See you later. And then pick you up and then whip you off to somebody else to do long jump. It doesn't particularly matter. Whereas to me, it's like, hold on, slow down, slow right down. If you were to me, first and foremost, I want to be a combined, my why I want to coach is I want to be a combined events coach that did not exist when I was a youngster, first of all. So if there was some kid, I don't care how good they are, I don't care how bad they are, but if they turned up and said, you know what, I want to do pentathlons, I want to do decathlons someday, I love combined events, it absolutely rocks, I just suck at it, can you help me? Or I'm good at it, but I want to get better. Like literally any kid that was just that committed and determined, I would swoop them up under my wing straight away. No questions asked. No questions asked. And to me, there is a real problem in this country with decathletes. Heptathletes, I think so, but the evidence would suggest no. And the evidence I would point to is in the last 25 years, we've had, well, who have we had? We've had Denise Lewis, we've had Kelly Sotherton, we've had Jess Ennis Hill, we've had Katherine Johnson Thompson. We've had people coming through like Morgan Lake was a pretty good heptathlete until she decided to switch on to just high jump. Jade O'Dowda's coming through. She's quite well. We've had Neve Emerson, who's won World Junior stuff. We've had Abigail Paulett, who's done World Indoor stuff. Um, and then even younger, but coming through, we've got Eden Robinson, who did really well at the World Junior Champs. Thea Brown, who did really well and got a silver medal at the under-18 European champs this year. To me, I just see the conveyor belt of just like, and the thing is, in their year groups, they're not alone. I remember the English schools under 17 last year, where it was Thea Brown, Eden Robinson, and Zoe Gregory. And all three of them broke like 5,200, 5,300 points, whatever it was. And of the top 8 UK performances, three of them were them that year. That's absolutely mental. And so one of the things I was really, really miffed about when I was at the UK steering group is I can't remember who, but somebody mentioned like, oh, I think the under 17 girls were fairly average last year. And I immediately was like, no, hold on, hold on. You had three or four girls over 5,000 points, and three of them at English schools, one, two, and three, got top 8 UKA performances. Now, some of them beat Jess Ennis Hill when she was under 17. Granted, Jess Ennis had to throw a heavier javelin and shot put and whatever, but hold on a minute. Like, these girls are good. Let's not put them down. And so to me, the what I'm trying to get back to is there appears to be, whether there's not, there's a constant conveyor belt of really talented heptathletes coming through. And so I've got no, to me, if somebody said, oh, well, England aren't very good at generating top class heptathletes, I would say that is clearly not true. I think on the world scene, I think if somebody said, well, who's the best British heptathlete, or Britain doesn't have any good heptathletes, I don't quite see the logic in that. I see Katarina Johnson Thompson getting a silver last year. Sorry, this year at the the Olympics. I mean, let's face it. The only person who beat her was Nafi Tiam, and Nafi Tiam is just a generational talent. Like she's broken 7,000 points. She's up there in the elites with um oh God, world record holder Jackie Joyner Kersey and Carolina Kluft. And there's one more 7,000 pointer Russian lady. I forget her name, but yeah, man, Nafi Tiam is elite. Like coming second to her is not like, oh, you should have tried a bit harder. It's like it's Nafi Tiam, you know. Anyway, so girls, I don't see there's much of a problem, whereas the boys or the men, shall we say, decathletes, there is a serious problem. uh, yeah, there is. I don't think that's a controversial take. Uh, I think the very fact we've had eight, 8 decathletes all time break 8,000 points, whereas other countries like Germany and America are churning 8,000 point decathletes, 8 of them every year for decades. And we are struggling to produce one a year, if that. I mean, one guy did 8,000 points last year, Jack Turner. He hasn't done it since. There's this young lad, Sammy Ball, who's broken the British record for crying out loud for under 17 octathlon. And I'm pretty sure he, the under 20 record as well, he's 7,900 points with senior implements as a first year senior now. And I really hope he breaks 8K. I can't see how he won't, but the point is, Sammy Ball is just breaking 8K and he's been spanking. He's been spanking the competition and setting British records for quite a few years since COVID now, since 2020. You know, Sammy Ball is not the standard of UK, as in like, oh, he's just an out everyday like top 10 decathlete. He's the best of our very best of our very best historically. Let's put that into context. Like not many Sammy Balls come around. In actual fact, Sammy Ball, he broke the under 17 octathlon record that was set by Ed Dunford. And Ed Dunford was a year older than me. And he did that in like the early 2000s. And Sammy Ball did this octathlon in 2022 or 2023, wherever it was, 2021, like 20 odd years later. Yeah, yeah. So if anybody tried to argue that decathletes in the UK are anywhere near as good as heptathletes in the UK, I'd have to seriously, yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't argue them anyway because it'd probably be a sign of like their lack of just general observation. But I don't see how they can make that argument. And to me, one of the reasons why, one one of the reasons why, is we seem to have not cracked this one coach versus many approach when it comes to combined events. Um, there are other reasons as well. Like in this country, football is very popular, so quite a lot of very fast, sporty young lads who'd probably be great all rounders would either go into sprinting or just staying football. That's another issue. We've got another issue of just coaching. We don't have many coaches that can actually do combined events. There's just a lot of things. But anyway, what I'm about to show you and what these grids are is I thought about it and I have about 20 athletes and about 10 of them are male, 10 of them are female. And interestingly, I'd probably say it's a pretty even, I can't remember what the stats were, but it was a relatively even mix of athletes that just see me and athletes that see other coaches. I think it was something like 12 to 8. So 12 athletes see other coaches and 8 see only just me. And what I did was to, keep it relatively fair. I based it on the points per event across all their events in 2023 versus their average points across all their events in 2024, best performance. And then it was a percentage change. So I was measuring just improvement. So my gut reaction was that if they're roughly the same, the girls should do better than the boys because the boys' point scoring seems to be a bit more lenient, shall we say, even though you have, well, at younger ages, it seems to be the case. And even at the higher ages, that seems to be the case. I mean, a 7,000 point heptathlon is 1,000 points per event. You don't get decathletes breaking 10,000 points. That's insane. If they broke 9,000 points, that'd be, wow, that'd be big news. But 10,000, no, not in this century, I don't think. But anyway, the point is, and so since girls tend to score higher on average, that means if they improve, it's probably going to be a bigger percentage increase, and who knows. But the point was, um, I, few key things. It seemed that the boys, whether it's Norman Park, Canterbury, or elsewhere, the boys outperformed the girls. That was the key metric, and it was significant. When it was significant, I did a hypothesis test at 5% significance level, um, testing it against a binomial distribution, and it was fine. So yeah, this clearly, you know, this is significant. And then versus a one coach and a two coach, uh, well, a one coach and a multiple coaches approach. And the one thing that stuck out to me was that it's definitely the boys that are performing better, and it's most definitely the athletes that only have one coach, i.e., me, that seems to be doing better. Um, and if anything, um, well, you could be saying, well, let's look at just the one coach versus multiple coach approach, which I believe is the next slide. We're literally talking 16% to 8% difference. What does that make? Like 8%, who cares? I mean, they're still improving, both are working. But my point is, one is clearly not as optimal as the other. And giving away 8% on points, on 600 points, that's 48 points you're giving. Like, that's quite big. That can lose something. That could miss out on a SIAB. That could be from third to fifth. You can suddenly go from a medal position to top 5 or top 10. It's and I think what's probably more telling is I don't expect every athlete to make 16% improvement each year. That's not what I'm expecting to happen. What I'm expecting to happen is they make those 18, 16% improvements, and each year that 16, 18% depreciates a little bit. And in the next graph I'm going to show you, it's going to be an 80% or a 20% depreciation, sorry. So first year they might improve 18%, the next year it might be 14.5, next year it might be 10.5, next year it might be 9, and you get this kind of, you know, dying off, diminishing returns kind of graph. And to me, it's very telling because if you get them at a young enough age, and I'm not saying like 4 years old, but generally speaking, first year under 15, and they're starting at a 4,000 point decathlon level. So at under 15, they're about 2,000 points, which to me, an under 15-year-old, first year under 15 scoring 2,000 points, that's pretty good for a boy, but not like outrageously so. And for a girl, that's pretty standard. For a first year under 15 girl breaking 2,000 points, yeah, I'm pretty sure every single girl I coach has broken 2,000 points. And there's a whole mixture of girls there. They're all talented athletes, don't get me wrong, but 2,000 points, 200, 2000, sorry, 3 zeros, that's not that big of a deal. And there's hundreds of girls in the UK that are breaking 2,000 points in a pentathlon. Um, I'm not saying, please don't misinterpret this. I'm not saying if you get less than 2,000 points, you're rubbish. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying for an under 15 girl, scoring dead even 2,000 points is not very competitive at the national level. Or in a better way, it's not uncommon. The standard in this country is such that lots of girls in the UK do score over 2,000 points. Boys scoring over 2,000 points, not as common, but still pretty common. And so if you look at a compounded 16.9% improvement, but that improvement is depreciating by 20% over time, then what you get is that if you were to improve 16.9% compounded, but depreciating at 20%, then that 2,000 point pentathlete should be somewhere in the high 7,000s, just under the 8,000s by the time they reach 21. Okay, all things being equal. Now, okay, take this with a massive pinch of salt because obviously there's subject variability. Everybody's situations are different. It's not going to be a smooth increase. You might have 1 year where not a lot happens, another year where it's a breakthrough, and so on and so on. But statistically, the big picture, the big picture. And then if you look, I mean, what is 7,700 points for a heptathlon? Well, that means the heptathlete should be scoring about 5,500 points. And so if you said to somebody, by the time you're 21 and you're a senior, what's the likelihood they score 5,500 points in a heptathlon? That's dipped. But there's still a healthy amount of seniors that are doing that. When I say healthy, about 8, 9, 10. Whereas if I look at decathletes in this country doing 7,800 points plus, one or two, one, maybe three. At the moment, it's just Sammy Ball on 7.9, if I believe rightly, and Jack Turner. But that's it. That's it. Historically, by the time you reach 22 years old, according to that graph, you broke an 8K. And yeah, that just doesn't happen in this country. Whereas if you look at the red curve, the 8.8% improvement, and that's the average for in my group anyway, of having multiple coaches, you can see that compounded, even with the same depreciation, that potentially 7,700 point decathlete is only going to be just about scraping 6,000 points by the time they finish uni. And it's mad because whenever I look at decathletes, I think like Like, how are they scoring literally 1,000 points, maybe 1,400 points more than our best British guys? Are they that like physically superior specimens of athletes? They just make our guys look silly. And I don't think so. I've been to national decathlon champs and I've seen these men, these decathletes at our British champs, and they are physical specimens. I look at them and think like, holy balls. If anything, it's sad. I look at them and think like, how are you not breaking 8,000 points? You are in such great shape. You're clearly fast. What's going on? And I'm telling you now, it's the movement skills that were just not there, not ingrained at a young age. So that by the time they're 2021, they can start hammering the physical prep. They can start hammering the speed, 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 power, 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 bang, because their techniques are locked in. And I'm telling you now, that transition from 13 to 2021, that 7, 8 year gap, you can make some fantastic gains or you can make some mediocre gains. And it's so easy to go, well, they're improving, everything's all right. But you don't understand if because it's being compounded over 6, 7 years, if you have aspirations of being the best, you're piddling it down the drain. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying train harder. I'm not saying you have to be the best in the world or go home. I'm not saying your life should be solely judged and valued on points. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying you are massively cutting your nose off to spite your face by going to multiple coaches and expecting to optimize your development. I've had fallings out with parents, and I've even suggested a compromise. I've even said, look, the studies have shown that optimization or early specialization should really be happening about 14, 15, 16. So, look, they're 12, 13. Why don't they just stay with me for a couple of years? I'll look after them, make sure they have good movement skills, and then I'll recommend some specialist coach and they can do whatever event you want them to do and it'll be fine. It'll be so much more clearer and focused and just generally more of a positive impact. Um, because kids need consistency. I mean, adults need it too, don't get me wrong, but especially when you're developing as a person, let alone an athlete, you need that consistency. And I don't see how flittering them between different locations and different people is going to provide that. Even if those coaches get on like a house on fire, even if they're talking to each other all day and they're best buddies on WhatsApp or iMessage or whatever, it's just not going to work. I just don't, I can't, I'm willing to have a sit down and listen to somebody's long-term evidence of how it has worked. But in this country, it hasn't. In other countries like Sweden, like, oh yeah, that's what I missed out. I went to Sweden with Bryden, uh, his first international, kind of a Grand Prix type thing in Sweden. And just, yeah, people go to athletics clubs and they do everything. When I mean everything, they do everything. They'll just go to like a sports place and they'll do football, they'll do rugby, tennis, hockey, athletics. They do all the sports. They're like not only multi-event, but multi-sports. And then it slowly specializes as they get older. Like it's such a different setup than here. Here, the athletes and footballers and rugby players, they don't contact each other. Not really. Maybe if they want to like make sure that a certain sports ground is booked out at a certain time. But anyway, so the blue curve, the 16.9% improvement with depreciation of 20% is the average of my athletes that are uh, one coached. And the red one is the athletes that have multiple coaches. And it's still an improvement, don't get me wrong, but compounded over a longer period of time, it's not going to pay off. That's what really upsets me. So if we look at the top one, we've got the boys one, and so the average point score, um, the average point score was just over 480, I think. And so you can see that it's a bit hard to tell whether it's nearing the blue or the red curve. So blue was the 16.9% and the red one was the 8.8%. And to be honest, boys scoring is so hard to get points. I mean, these athletes could be running long jumping 6 meters, high jumping 180, hurdling 11.8 or 11.7 or whatever it is. And then I look at their point score and it's like 2,600 or 2007. I'm like, what? Whereas girls just seem to kind of do that with a shot put or just casually jump 4 meters 80 or whatever it is, and they'll be over 3,000 points, like nothing, under 15. So I do tend to find that girls scoring seems to be not lenient, but the girls seem to be better at a younger age. And so what I found really interesting is that I can only give averages up to the age of 15. And for the boys, it seems that once they're locked in and turn 14, that transition from 14 to 15, the progress just skyrockets. And what's really interesting is not only does the points per event skyrocket, but that's taken into account they're doing more events like discus, javelin, pole vault, 100 meters, 400 meters, all this stuff. They're not just doing the pentathlon, they're getting ready for octathlons and decathlons. So their average points is going up while introducing new events. Now I would expect that their average would take a little bit of a dip because javelin is a hard earning event. It's not particularly good. Discus, boys struggle with. Pole vault, although pole vault's a good scoring event, boys struggle with. 400 meters at 14, 15 years of age, quite a lot of boys struggle to break a minute. So that's like 400 points ish. And so if you've got a 550, 600 point average and you're introducing a 400 point, 500 point event, it's going to tank your average a bit as well. It's all these little things, but these boys just upwards. Whereas I found with the girls from 13 to 14 in my group, and this is the telling thing, the 13 to 14-year-old girls have been exactly in line with the 8.8%. And it's only the older girls that I've got data for. So the 15, 16, 17-year-old girls, that's like Isabella, Jessie, older girls, where and then Isabella has multiple coaches that Jessie doesn't. That massively drags the average up. And so the younger girls I find that have multiple different coaches, this isn't pentathlon average scores. This is points across all the events. So even the specific events they're training for, like some might have a hurdles coach, some might have a pole vault coach, some might have a shot and discus coach. It doesn't matter. The point is their average points is just kind of it's just leveling off. And it starts to rise again when they get a bit more serious. That's fine. It may be that this model's pretty bad and just athletes in general start off slow, spike up, and then plateau off again. Maybe there's that point where they start training really seriously and they have a growth spurt, hormones and puberty and the rest of it. That's absolutely fine. But what I've found is that the boys' rate of improvement this year, and specifically, and there's a lot of overlap, the boys that have one coach are massively like hitting it out of the park. Um, whereas the girls, and especially the girls that have multiple coaches, it's they're just not performing, and you can kind of see they're a bit irritable. They get a bit like, oh, I didn't feel like doing it this time, or oh, can I see you next week instead of Thursday? And it's just all this kind of get the violin out kind of stuff. Um, and so I thought to myself, is my training more aimed at male progression than females? And generally, I genuinely, I don't want it to be. My sessions are open to all and stuff. And what I found incredibly interesting is that um, Jessie has improved her overall point score by adding events she's not particularly have trained that well, like discus, 100 meters, 400, and pole vault, because she's going into decathlons. But she's adapting to it quite well. There's obviously room for improvement, don't get me wrong, but she's improving, you know. But is she doing decathlons because my training group is aimed at decathlons? Part of me thinks maybe. Part of me thinks, well, hold on a minute. I have my main sessions in the evenings from 6 till 8, which is aimed at heptathletes, really. And if you want to do decathlon stuff, the discus and pole vault, there's sessions that start earlier at 5 o'clock, an hour before. So, you know, if you were a girl and you turned up at 6 o'clock, you'd never know that we do decathlon stuff and you finish at 8. Or is it because the boys are getting more results because they're training for 3 hours 3 times a week, whereas the girls are only training for 2 hours 3 times a week? Or is it because the girls are training for 2 hours once a week and then doing stuff with other coaches, whereas the boys are consistently doing 3 hours a week with me, having a consistent base 3 times a week? More data is needed. I suspect the boys are putting in more hours, the boys are working harder, the boys are getting consistent training, and the girls are flittering around a little bit. They're having fun. I mean, that's what kids do. It's what kids should do. I get that. The boys that I coach, though, are very. They've come from very sporty backgrounds. They've done lots of different sports, but now they're at the age of 14, 15, 16, where I'm confident that they're locking in the sense that they're like committed to it. They love the challenge of combined events. The England Athletics Octathlon was such a for the under 15s. It was such a to me it was galvanizing. I think Thomas and Jack preferred the octathlon. Or maybe I'm speaking for them, but I think they actually preferred the 2 day event over the pentathlon. I think they just felt like, yeah, this is more of a fight. I can do this. It was just more variety. They loved it. And to me, that's such a good sign because you don't want to train an athlete for pentathlons, just pentathlons, and then there's the winter between under 15 top year and under 17 first year. You're scratching your head going, right, okay, so I've got to get them to do a 400, a discus, and a jav. And then the hurdles obviously go from 80 to 100. Like, how am I going to do that? Whereas I feel like these athletes for a young age have been doing all the events and it's been drip fed over a long period of time. And I'm starting to see results with, and it's the under 17s that are coming through. Now, Ollie, I mean, I said this ages ago, he was going to struggle with pentathlon, but his octathlon is just going to be insane, absolutely insane. And in the last 20 years, there's only been two people better than Ollie as a first year octathlon. That's Ashley Bryant and David Guest. And Ollie, when he ran his 100 at the August octathlon, that was his first 100 in ages, like a good year. He ran 11.74. And then a month later at Canterbury, just had a little bit more practice, ran 11.45. Just literally lopped off a third of a second. Like he's just there's so much more potential there. And Josh, when that guy comes back and is fit and able, there's going to be trouble. Not for him. There's going to be trouble for other people. And both of those boys, or all of them in fact, but both of those boys, they've done all the events in training. They are so ready. I mean, their pole vault will be 3 meters or something, but they've been doing it. They're confident. They're not going to know height in pole vault. They know what they're doing. Same in discus, same in javelin, same in all the events. There's no nerves there. They're prepared. And I would never, ever, ever, ever send an athlete, I mean, that's essentially what's happened this year. I would never send an athlete to a big national competition unless we'd had a conversation about it and they were 100% ready. And it's the same with one of the girls that didn't go to English schools. There was no way I was going to say to her, go to that English schools or else. There's no way. If she wasn't ready, it's absolutely fine. I'm not going to force you to it. You know, it's all about building up good experiences. If you don't want to go, you don't want to go. It's absolutely fine. Um, but yeah, Thomas, Jack, Alex, Story, even little Leo, they've been doing events. They're going to be a handful in a couple of years' time. I can just tell. It's really promising. The girls, it remains to be seen. I think Jesse's working hard. That's absolutely fine. Some of the other girls are working all right, but I've yet to see that commitment, and I think that's why their performance has not been as high. There's been a little bit of going here, going there, and it's not a bad thing. They're kids. They're young. That's it's absolutely fine. I think the boys are more locked in. I'm not saying that's a better thing, but in terms of athletics performance, if you want performance, they're going the right way about it. Now, if some of those girls are like, yes, you know what, I want to be the best, I want to do the best I can, I want to progress as much as I can, then I'd say, well, it's just not happening because of, and I suspect it's multiple coaches. And that's fine. But one of the key studies that UKA, especially at level 3 or the event group or whatever, they push all the time is the whole specialization. It was the German study of like 1,500 athletes where 400 of them went to the world champs and got medals. And they asked them at what age they specialized. And the average age of the ones that didn't go to the world champs was 12. And the average age of the ones that did go to the world champs was like 14.6 years old or whatever it was. And so, yeah, to me, that would symbolize that, yeah, 14, 15, 16, that's okay. 12, 11, 12, 13, that's probably a bit young to be specializing. Um, that study said so. I mean, I'm sure there's other studies as well, but I, there's just no rush in these things. Let them be kids, let them enjoy themselves. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where the group is. Um, as always, I'm immensely proud of them. They do so well. It's always sad when athletes have to go, but again, I wish them well as well. It's no hard feelings. I pour a lot of time and effort into the group, and yeah, it's every night after school and after a long day of teaching kids. And as much as I love teaching, it definitely takes energy to do it. It's not a effortless experience. It drains you. It drains you by the end of the day. And I I just don't want to coach athletes that I turn up. They're like, oh, why am I even here? Like, oh, I'm not, athletes that just aren't committed, that they want to be there. They want to do stuff. I don't care if they're going to be the next Olympic champion or the best thing they're going to do is like a 2 meter long jump. I couldn't give a monkeys. I just want them to just do their best. Just do their best, enjoy the sport. That's it. And if you haven't, if I personally think you should do combined events up until the age of 14, 15 if you want to be a field event or a sprinter. Middle distance, long distance, then maybe you should be doing more cross country than just running in general. I think that's different. I think you should still be doing a bit of like multiple events. Not entirely convinced about combined events. Um, but any kind of explosive athletic event, yeah, man, you should be doing combined events. I mean, it's great fun. And yeah, it just sets the tone for your rest of your athletic career. Specialize by all means after you turn 15, 16, 17, whatever, because let's face it, you're going to have 5 or 6 years before you get out of the under 23s and then you're senior properly. I know you're senior technically as soon as you turn 20, 21, whatever it is, but outside of under 23s, you've got nowhere else to hide. You are in the senior category. So from 17 years old to 23 years old, that's still 6 years to put in some good graft. That's such a long time, man. I think when you're younger, you should just be having fun, learning the skills, and just making good progress just from the enjoyment of the sport. I mean, it's not difficult, but some people make it difficult. So the plan till April, winter training is going to keep going. Well, it started. Thanks to Bryden, who's at Brunel University. We may visit there for maybe some 3 or 4 day training camps. That'd be nice. During the October half term or Christmas, to be decided. Not sure, haven't really planned anything, but it's nice to have it as an option. Um, One thing I'm probably going to say now is the indoor season for the group on the whole is not really a priority. There's going to be 1 or 2 athletes that are going to do indoor stuff. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, there were so many good results from last year indoors. Many athletes in the group are just want to focusing on the outdoor stuff, and they just want to put more work and just do some more technical stuff than having like a week off before a competition, then doing the comp, and then a week off. They just want to plow through it. Um, and also, the indoor stuffs tend to be quite far away, especially for athletes living deep in Kent, and they can't really justify, you know, traveling all that way for a 2 day event. And yeah, they just don't want to do it. They're not. It's not in their wheelhouse, to be honest. They're more interested in the summer stuff. They want revenge. Um, so yeah, and I think they also want more time to develop because they understand that from 2026, UK is going to go from the odd age groups, so 13s, under 15s, under 17s, to even age groups, under 12s, under 14s, under 16s, under 18s. And so that means quite a lot of the people in our group are going to be either under 17 bottom year coming, and then bottom year under 18, then top year under 18. So they're going to have 2 years bottom of the age group, or they're going to be in the unfortunate part of bottom year under 17 and then top year under 18 the year after that because of their birthdays. And so everything just seems like, whoa, okay, we've got to like, get ready for 110-meter hurdles in 2 years. Oh, all this kind of panicky stuff. And I think it's fine, but I think they're bought into the fact that yeah, there's going to be let's get progress first before performance. And so traveling for these big comps are just not really on their agenda. Uh, English schools combined events is going to be a focus. So we're going to try and get as many athletes into the Southeast regionals and thus English schools. But I think the shifting is more towards the 2 day events run by EA. So getting more into the under 15 girls hexathlon, more into the under 15 boys octathlon, the under 17s decathlon. Yeah, just more of that stuff really. Um, and young Jessie wants to go and do the world champs for decathlon next year. She's hopefully bitten the decathlon bug. I mean, she was 600 points down in second place in that Kent um, decathlon, and oh man, it was emotional. She was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to do this." Had a little bit of a wobble after the pole vault, even though technically she got a PB. It's the first time doing it, but PB's a PB. But that's what I mean. Like some people are really driven by performance, and some people are driven by progress. And she was more performance focused at that point in time. She didn't get the fact this was her first ever pole vault, and she's made progress. It was 0 meters. Now it's her PB 170 or whatever it was. So the second day, she managed to pull herself by her bootstraps, gone from 600 points behind to winning the event by like 400 points or whatever, and got a new championship best performance. So yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping she's super duper galvanized for the world champs if they are even ones next year. And actually, her score would have put her in 8th place in the world's women champs in the elite competition. And as an under 20, that's pretty good going. She's hyped for it. She's yeah, I mean, a bit more training, she could break the top 5, maybe medal. And yeah, it's competing abroad. It's doing all the fun stuff you want from athletics, getting out there, having fun, making experiences, doing great performances. That's what she loves. But yeah, that's where the group is. And yeah, until 6 months' time.